As you're probably aware, Nira Yuval Davis was originally scheduled for this slot, but unfortunately she can't make it because she's got COVID. So we're very disappointed, and we obviously send her our best wishes. But as they say, every cloud has a silver lining, and our silver lining is in the form of Dr. Nationalism himself, Antonsich, who is the head of the Loughborough University Nationalism Network and is basically the driving force behind this conference, and has also a long history of studying nationalism, multiculturalism, and belonging. So two things to note about that. One is, as you're gazing on the beautiful architecture and vistas of this glorious town, the man responsible is there. And the second thing to note is that, he's one of the best qualified people to talk about this topic. So I'll just give you a brief biography. He didn't want me to say too much. I'm going to say he's one of the few people I know that has got 2 PhDs. He thought having to study for one was bad enough. Well, he decided that going for another one was going to be a good idea. So he started off focusing his research around kind of historical and political geography, did more theoretical work, also did some research around the fascist Italian regime in Ethiopia. And then he studied for a second PhD at Boulder, Colorado in the US, where he focused much more on the link between territory, identity, and belonging, and obviously that's informed much of his research up to the present day. So in today's session, he's going to talk about his research around Italians and what we might call questions of belonging, hierarchies of belonging in Italy in relation to racialized Italians. So second, third generation Italians born in Italy, perhaps to parents or grandparents who came from other parts of the world. And I'm now going to pass over to Marco.
Thank you very much, Michael. I mean, it's always very generous. Michael and I, we are friends. I did all what I could in order to bring Michael to Loughborough. It was based in London before, so it's also thanks to him. Now we can, also other people as well, we created the Loughborough University Nationalism Network. When Nira, unfortunately, on Saturday, she told us that she could not make it. We did everything we could not to have me now standing. Okay, so as you can imagine, it's not possible to come up with a plenary over the weekend. So this is something that's been presented before. If you heard it before, keep quiet. Hopefully it will be entertaining for the audience. Right, okay, here we are. What is about basically give you a summary of my past research. We're now consolidating the room on liberal research, but it's the past research of mine. There was around the so-called New Italians. You will discover later in the lecture that this term is quite problematic. But the big question you have there is basically, if the population changes, what happens to the idea? And when I say the population changes, it's because of international migration. It's quite complex, it's quite articulated. He has a first part, try to understand what is the response to politics with a big P, so the politicians, by analyzing parliamentary debates, interviewing politicians. If you go on the website and you're familiar with Italian politics, you might maybe recognize some of those politicians. So how politics with a big P responded to the demographic change, and then going to the level of the so-called New Italians, again quotation marks, so basically people that identify themselves as Italian, but they don't have an Italian background, white Italian background. And then the third part is about how the majority society, the ethnic majority society, responds to the demographic change. It was funded by the European Union with a Marie Curie grant. It was only 2 years, so maybe too ambitious, and actually I should say that the last part is still in progress. I haven't finished yet writing anything about the ethnic majorities. I'll be focusing on the new Italians, but let me give you a bit of a context first. Where am I starting from? Starting from here. This for me is the problem quotation marks. Okay? These are just the stats over the last 30 years that show you the demographic change for many European, Western European countries. As you could see, over the last 30 years, all European countries have somehow experienced an increase in the percentage of the foreign born. In the case of Italy, you might say, well, Italy is not one of the countries that experienced the most this demographic change. However, what matters, and I guess political scientists will tell you so, it's not so much the amount, the absolute amount, but it's the variation over time. In the case of Italy, is the country among all of that that experienced one of the highest variation over a short span of time. This is what impacts on public attitudes, particularly public attitudes against migration. And as you can see, as you know, Italy right now has a far right, not even a center right, it's a far right government. And somehow this is also an explanation why this is the case. If you look into the future, what I show you in terms of the statistics, this actually looks even more pronounced. So this is sorry. This is a projection, it's a demographic projection by Lanzieri, which is a statistician at the Eurostat. Is, to my knowledge, you can let me know if there is anyone else, but is the only one that basically works on demographic projections. And he's old, as you could see, but then he say, look, by 2060, we will have at least one foreign-born parent. Sorry, people that will have one foreign-born parent will account for 33%. And I asked him, do you have any more recent statistics? He said, no, I don't. And I pestered him so many times, please give me some other data I need to show. And then he came up with, yeah, I can give you only this one, which is a bit kind of, not comprehensive. But basically, the transition to a majority-minority society, which means when the ethnic minorities become numerically the majority, it will happen particularly for the German-speaking countries, and it's basically Austria, Germany, Liechtenstein. Who care about Liechtenstein? But the trend is the same for everybody. But first of all, it will be mainly the German-speaking countries. So this is the trend. And if I have to play the geographer here, I see my colleague geographer there. I was not expecting. Thank you, John. I'm embarrassing now that I mentioned I'm a geographer. If you look at the geography, if you look at this trend from a geographical perspective, so if you move away from the national scale and you adopt the urban scale, you can see how this phenomenon is already markedly present in some of the major cities. So when you go down from the national to the city level, you see that majority-minority scenario is already present. And if you look at the age, if you look particularly at the young age, you already see that the majority-minority is quite common. For instance, the case of Vietnam in 2012, overall 49%, but if you look at the cohort of 0-9, there was at least 60% that belonged to the ethnic minority. So this is the kind of scenario that, in a sense, produced this. So obviously you are scholars and students of nationalism, and you know that the new is very much debated. To what extent is new nationalism? Is there also the same stuff? But the sense that the kind of nationalism that we are experiencing today is so much informed by those public attitudes against migration is very much present. Is anti-everything. In this case, he also had Putin. They should not be there. They didn't know what Putin could have come up with when they created the cover of The Economist. But you know, you have Le Pen, you have Farage, all this idea of these guys that say, we want our country back. Back from what? Back from many things, but particularly also back in terms of the plurality, the demographic plurality the societies have experienced in the recent years. In my case, as the title says, I'm not interested in this kind of nationalism, this kind of appropriation of the nation. I'm interested on the other side of the nation. I'm interested in the other faces that don't look like the faces I showed before, the white faces. I'm interested in the voices of people that don't have a white face, because those people equally belong to the nation, but their voices is not captured, does not go on the cover of The Economist. Okay? So I'm focusing on the new Italians, as I said, again, it's quite problematic. Methodologically, the data that goes into the study come from a variety of sources. First of all, the so-called 2G second generation associations. In Italy, there are quite many of them, particularly Rete G2, and they were quite vocal. They were cross-ethnic in the sense they were not, particularly Rete G2, focusing only on one ethnicity. People from all ethnicity were present in these associations. And with research assistants, we look at the forums, whatever was on their own website. There was a lot of discussions going on. We interviewed some of the key members. But we also look at the artistic production. There's quite a lot of stuff happening on the web. You go on YouTube, a lot of people post their own video clips, some of the rappers. Again, looking at the lyrics, interviewing some of them. If you go on the website that I showed at the beginning, you can see a bit more about the methodology. Since I'm conscious of the time, I'm rushing, hopefully it will be a good time for questions. Let me tell you what I would like to do with everything I presented so far. So, to summarize the research, or to offer you an overview, I come up with these 4 concepts that possibly can articulate what we might learn when we look at the nation from the perspective of people with foreign background. Okay? Let me first start with the naming. Each of these actually is associated with the paper. Naming. How do children of migrants, and when I say children of migrants, I don't mean people who are underage. I just mean young adults whose parents are not white Italians. How do they call themselves? And then I will tell you why I think this is important. The first strategy is about embracing the term the societies gave to them. So second generation, however wrong it is, because these people did not migrate, so they cannot be migrants themselves, cannot be called. But second generation was the only term that was available in Italy back then, and they use it as a way of saying we are not like our parents, we are different. So they demarcate that difference, and also to put forward that claim, that political claim, which is about citizenship. Those of you who are familiar with the Italian case, they know that citizenship in Italy is still based on jus sanguinis, so it's passed via bloodlines. I have some friends, they are in Brazil, they were able to claim Italian citizenship despite not speaking Italian, not knowing anything about Italy, but they do have the grandparents who were Italian and will still be able to get the citizenship, contrary to people that maybe were born in Italy, they don't know the language of their own parents, they spend all their life there, and still for them, citizenship is not there. So, embracing the term second generation was like, we are here. Look at us. And we have our own demand. And the main demand was change the citizenship law. These are some of the quotes. The tells you they are aware there is a provisional term, but it's a term that is a necessary term in order to put the problem quotation mark on the map to make it visible. It was just the only thing the term was available. This is an interesting point, and I use Judith Butler, that says that the possibility of the subject to express itself is constrained by the language which is available to them. That was the only term. And then tactically, again, if you want to use this thought and think about strategy and tactics, so you use tactics as a way of maneuvering within the field of power. And so in that case, that's the only thing is available. Let's use it in order to flag our own demands, our own needs. Okay? The second strategy, always part of the relation to the naming, is this rewriting, and is particularly associated with the term New Italians. But the new is not necessarily associated with that. It is associated with Italy and Italian as a whole. Because Italy has been transformed by the demographic change, then we need to rethink Italy, what it means, what it stands for, in Italian, the meanings, as a whole. This is a person, again, come from the Forum of Refugee Due. They say, well, can a 30-year-old big guy who was born and spent all his life in Varese? Varese is close to my home place, which is Lake Como, not far from Lake Como. Yeah, it's boring, I know, but I think Lake Como is not as boring as Varese, because they don't have as a beautiful lake as we have, but anyhow. Can be called New Italia. I ask myself, wouldn't it be better to use the adjective new for the country, for Italy? That's the key message, that's the key point. Society has changed, and we need to rethink the country, Italy, the nation as a whole. Then you have a third strategy, which is contest the term second generation, contest the term New Italians, and adopts instead hyphenated identities. I'm Italian Peruvian, I'm Egyptian Italian, etc. I have somehow, I mean, in the case of Italy, this is new. I mean, if you look about this country, it's nothing new about British Muslim, etc. In the case of Italy, only recently people start calling themselves in this way of, using this hyphenated identity. But I think there's an issue there. And the issue is because when you listen or when you read or when you interview them, what happens is that I'm Italian because X, Y, Z. I'm Peruvian because A, B, C. So they still reify the nation. They still attach the nation to a specific place and to a specific culture. So they don't use hyphenated identities as a way of challenging the meaning of the nation and opening up to a plurality perspective. They still confine the nation here and there. So they reproduce rather than they displace the link between culture and place. The nation still remains a bounded culture. Only in the case of Black Italians or Afro-Italians, you see something else. So you see on top of this also a sort of transnational identity along the lines of Paul Gilroy, the Black Atlantic. Some people now use also the Mediterranean, Black Mediterranean. But again, in this case, we bypass the nation, we go to another level, which unify Black around a supranational marker. So the whole point of naming is that names do matter. Boundaries, symbolic boundaries of belonging, they are drawn around names. Names are involved in practices of inclusion and exclusion. So it's quite important to take close attention, pay attention how these are deployed. And we move to the second one, which is about scale, obviously, geography, here we are. A colleague of mine, Tania Rossetto, is based at Padova University. She talks about the tale of two scales. It's a tale because it narrates the story that the local is empowering, is progressive, is embracing of the diversity. cities, cosmopolitan conviviality. You will hear tomorrow Valdovan that will make that argument. That's why we invited him. There will be an interesting fight between Motul and Valdovan if you are here tomorrow for the plenary. And the national is instead a site of oppression, discrimination, homogenization, etc. To what extent this is true? To what extent is instead, a maquette? It's something that is created as more of a myth. And I do take the fact that actually it's not true. In my paper, by listening to the voices of the children of migrants, I make the case that actually, and you tell me whether in your own countries it's the same or not. In the case of Italy, the local register is mobilized as a way of making a national claim. And I will show you why this is the case. How many people in the room speak Italian or can understand Italian? Wow, more than unexpected. Can I play a short video clip? Just very, very short. I promise you. Very short. Let me first talk about what it's about, why we don't understand what it is. So, this is a video. Forte Chiaro. It's produced by one of the main second generation associations, Rete G2, produced in 2005, and at the beginning it was just a short video clip, again, for supporting the claim we are Italian, please change the citizenship law, okay? And the video captured the attention of the politician, and actually it was shown in the parliament, it got support by the Ministry of Culture, it was shown in the schools, so it went big. It was not just a little thing, despite if you see it's on YouTube, there's the link. There's not much in there. You have different people that come to the fore and they say whatever they want to say in relation to the whole dimension of being Italian, etc. Here you have a person, and let me see, just to give you a sense of how it is presenting the case.
Tu a me mi vedi come seconda classe, io a te attaccato.
Ma ti sei mai guardato allo specchio? Ciao, sono Samira, ho 26 anni e sono nata a Roma.
La mattina mi sono svegliato e mi sono scoperto seconda generazione.
Io immigrato sì, forse da San Valentino a Porto Rosso, invece.
Right. Apologies for those of you that did not understand. And sometimes you see also, every time, I said I'm Italian, oh yes, we recognize you because hand gesture. It's not true. But you see how they present it, right? Here, oh yes, Susan. But also, what is more important for me is the vernacular is used. People that understand Italian understand there's a very heavy Roman accent. People are from Rome. It's not fake. It's the way, as Italian, we white Italian, acknowledge that you are Italian. If you can hear, oh yes, you have an accent from that region, from that local place. If you don't hear an accent, there is something wrong. In this case, the vernacular is used indeed, I would say unreflexively, unconsciously, but it is there and is a very important marker that reinforces their own claim of Italianness rather than reproducing that tale of the local versus the national that I was mentioning before. And the guy that joked, yes, immigrant from where? I moved from one periphery of Rome to another periphery of Rome. If you want to call me immigrant for this one, call me immigrant. And it's an interesting one again, for those of you who speak Italian, you can go on YouTube, etc. It's generation, but it's the Jew, it plays with the new generation. It's an interesting wordplay there. And the film director said that many second generations are often attached to the dialect exactly because they mark their Italianness. Speaking dialect allowed them to be somehow accepted. And when these clips were showed in other parts of Italy, people from Milano say, oh yes, these people are really from Rome. By saying that you're really from Rome, at the same time, you are also confirming they are Italians. So the locale is not played against the nation, but is mobilized to make a more genuine claim of national belonging. So it's really a tale that juxtaposing national and the local. Another strategy, blurring. Sorry, it's a bit long. I will try to go a bit quicker. It just emerged from the data how some of the children of migrants, they use the internal divide. For those of you that I will show you, for those of you who are familiar with Italy, history, you know there is still a north-south divide. Southerners, northerners, etc. And it's interesting how this divide is played by the children of migrants as a way of bringing them into the country. You already have that difference. We just extend the difference. We also add ourselves in this diversity continuum, as I call it. Hopefully it will become clear as soon as I present the slides. A bit of a context. So Italy was one of the countries that experienced the highest level in history of migration, people going out. It was about 30 million back then. At a certain point in time, outside of Italy, there were 27 million between the 19th and 20th century. 27 million was the same amount of the national population. So half of the population was outside the country. So it's massive, one of the highest. At the same time, particularly after World War II, you also have the huge south-north migrations. You're familiar with the no Irish, no dogs in this country. In this case, they were no terroni. Terroni is the derogative terms used for people from the south. We don't rent to terroni. We don't rent to people from the south. In northern cities, particularly in Torino, where there were the major factories. Okay? And here you have actually is a record, is a vinyl, is a song, if you can see, Franco Tincali, in which you have the man protecting the daughter. You will never get married with my daughter, you going, where you southern? Anyhow, this is a bit of a context. It tells you the fractures inside the Italian nation. And this is something that goes back, actually, it's not, it goes back to the travelers. People from this country as well, they were traveling the south, they were somehow mesmerized by this difference. And the south of Italy is a sort of liminal zone, as it was put by one of his authors. A liminal zone between Europe and Africa. And so the sense of Orientalism was already created in Italy even before it expanded to India or so on. And after unification, this fracture is even more pronounced because the north, from which the thrust, the drive of unification started, the North wanted to show how modern it was. In order to show such modernity, it compared and contrast against the South. It was still in progress, in development. North as a modern, civilized, industrious, and European. And so the South ended up as the internal order. Even another point for you, as a matter of curiosity, the Italian positive school of anthropologists came up with the notion of the race, and the South belonged to the Negroid race, something that was adopted in the Americas, in the US, and so the Southern migrants in the US were considered not white. Interestingly, the people that come up with Cefalo was from the South himself. It's not that because we are two races, or then we are not one nation. It was a nation in a sense, it was plural. It was still composed by two races, and so it was unified despite having these distinctions. Quite interesting. Sorry, I'm conscious that I'm running out of time, so I'm going quite quick and I don't have the time to explore this point. But the key point is that these internal fractures were indeed exploited, quotation marks, by the children of migrants. First, the fact that obviously, well, how can you call us migrants when you were the migrants, guys? I mean, folks, gentlemen, ladies, the Albanians, Filipinos, Moroccan, Chinese, Ethiopians, etc., they were you. How difficult is it to explain it? Italian abroad means what immigrants means in Italy. So this is the first level of rhetoric they are using, exposing indeed the fracture of the other in Italian immigrants abroad. But the other is also the othering of southern migrants in northern Italy. You have still tons of problems of acceptance among yourself between Milanese and Bergamaschi, Neapolitans, Calabresi. Where is the Italy which has to welcome me as a new citizen? How do you think a foreigner can feel welcome when not even the Italians are always welcome among themselves? So, this is the strategy about adopting the internal fractures. But then there is another one, which has to do indeed with the blurring the divide between the internal order and the external order. And one of the individual interviews basically says, to me, our condition is similar to the second generation of those who have moved from the south to the north of Italy. Why so? For two reasons. The first reason is because obviously they are second generation, and so they did not migrate, they were born there. But the second point is also that class difference, because they grew up exactly with the children of the southerners in the suburbs of the big cities. And so it's that level of subalternity that brings them together in this sort of commonality. And more interesting, you have Amara Lacouche, an author which I really like, if you read Italian, and he's a beautiful writer, and presenting in these novels the fact that, it's quite difficult to understand who is really an Italian. Southern Italians often pass off North Africans, and the other way around is a carnivalesque babe of mistaken identity. And the same movie presents Enea, the person who's also the film director, as so many parents, has a Roman accent, Vito, the second person, so many mothers, Sicilian father, like nicknamed her Bangladesh, Mario, mother from Rome, father from Calabria, but he's often mistaken for a Tunisian. So it's really this band, this carnivalesque, we don't really understand, it's such a mixing, it's blurring, that diversity continuum that displaces the wild fantasy of the unitary fixed idea of the ethno-racial nation. And out of this plurality, actually, you see some of the children of migrants, maybe those who have, they are more aware, they are more reflexive of what's going on. They try to use this plurality again as a way of rewriting the nation in plural and relational terms. The term Italian is a term for a community made of many parts. It can be a part Italian, a part Peruvian, maybe Pugliese. I mean, a person can be a patchwork, an ensemble of many dimensions. And here again, recently I saw a girl from Puglia, and I asked her, "Is your mother from South America?" Because she was mestiza to her eyes. And she said, "No, we don't have any history of migration, they're white." She was not white. She has told me her mother's side was all black. So it's obvious that something happened in the family. So adding up, so the children of migrants' perspective can help Italians to reconsider their past, their mixing. This is a country of mixing. We, children of migrants, are the last piece of a very old history of migration. So that's the new interesting notion of the nation, which is conceptualized in plural and of relational terms, in relation to other countries, rather than against, as you can see in the new nationalism. Okay. Last one, sorry. The last one is about the linguistic sameness and the semantic strangeness. It's a short circuit. I should confess, I was on the train myself. I was reading, etc. I heard someone speaking Italian, right? When I stood up, I was curious. I turned around, and with a sense of surprise myself, I saw they were not white faces. You say, "Oh, how racist you are." Possibly, yes. but I confess my own honest sense of surprise, because people in Italy are still used, and particularly maybe my generation, maybe it's different, the younger generation, to see and hear Italian and they associate with Italian physics. Okay? So I investigated this sense of surprise, that level of linguistic sameness. We hear they sound like us, they sound like me, but then you turn, they don't look like me, they don't look like us. And this is an interesting dynamic that is going on. Two weeks ago, this is Samira, a lady that is wearing a scarf. They took the son in the north of the city of Milan to a crash. She reported her own experience. 2 weeks ago, I went to the crash where, if all goes well, my son will have to go in September. And while I was speaking and explaining to the teacher the character of my son, she got lost. And she interrupted me to say, "What? Oh, how you speak Italian so well? They told the town council that you were foreigners." So I asked myself, what did she retain of all my discourse about my son? On what did she concentrate on? On the character of my son, or maybe on the fact that she was expecting to talk to an immigrant, whereas she was speaking to an Italian with a scarf? Because she then totally deconcentrated from my discourse and concentrated instead on the fact that I was speaking Italian well, like here, if not better. That sense of surprise is what I'm interested in. I'm using again Sarah Ahmed, and she used the term the visual economy of recognition. In this case, there is the crisis of recognition. We don't understand what's going on here. The meaning is suspended. Okay? Where our skins, our faces are supposed to hold the truth, in this case, they don't hold the truth. We don't understand what's going on. And for me, this might be potentially transformative. It can be an experience that can tell you that there's something is going on in the country. There is a change. How do you address that change? What you get out of that sense of surprise? Is it transformative of how you understand what it means to be Italian today? And here, I don't have many data to answer that question, that power of transformativity when there is that short circuit that's generated between the linguistic sameness and the somatic difference, strangeness. Here's an example of comes from a blog. The person was actually an adoptee from Korea and grew up in Bergamo. Bergamo is one of the big seats of the Northern League. If you know the Northern League, now it's just called the League. It's quite racist, openly xenophobic, etc. When South Korea won against Italy in the Football World Cup, suddenly all Asians of my city, Bergamo, became Koreans. I stopped my car at the traffic light, with the window down. Another car with 4 youngsters on board also stopped. One stared at me and with a mocking smile called the attention of his mates, who started insulting me. Faster Koreans, get the fact out here. Obviously in dialect. Again, think about the power of the dialect. Okay? Hey, well, I'm rather impulsive, so I got off, angrily shouting at them, also in dialect. Dude, they're the same here. They first looked puzzled. That's an interesting moment of suspension. The short circuit, they don't understand what's going on. He speaks like us. Why does it look like us? What's going on here? We don't understand. What is the reaction? Keep insulting and going. Okay? At the green light, they speeded away, keep insulting me. So you don't see much happening. There is a sense of something possibly there, can be, but no, we don't go. We go back to insulting. And now, last example, and then I go to the conclusion. This lady is a famous blogger, Chinese origin. And she tells the story at the Fiumicino airport. I was at the Fiumicino airport waiting to fly to Shanghai. There was the queue for the EU nationals and the queue for the other poor delegates. You know yourself, you go to the airports, the European, right? I get into the noble queue, and the police officer behind the glass, a lady, glanced at me in a friendly way. In front of me, just one person, whereas a dozen people are in the other queue. His colleague, the colleague of this lady, in the booth, where the poor Davies were standing, tells him, "Look at that one. She thinks she can jump the queue." I show my passport to the officer. He checks it, and he gives back to me. His stupid colleague says, "What? Have you let her go like this?" He replies, "She has an Italian passport." She looks at me. I look at her. She lowers her eyes. Finally, she shut up. It's a very interesting passage here. And what is happening? Why I read it? First, you have the return of the guys. She looks at me. I look at her. And returning the guys is a strategy of racialized minority to define why you're looking at me. Okay, so like gazing somebody, you have the power to gaze. You return the gaze as a way of contrasting. The passport, that's the civic nation that allows you to enter, to bypass that racism that you might experience. I have the passport. The passport is the classic term. It allows you to enter, to belong to them. But then the most interesting one, I think, for me, is that she lowers her eyes. She finally shut up. But you see nowadays who is in power in Italy. You see how many people in Italy that voted for the far right. So what does it mean that lowering the eyes? It's not at all unaccepted. It's not at all transformative. It's a sense of resentment that is emerging, that is feeding the far right. We don't like these things to happen. You should not be there. You should be in the other queue. I don't carry your passport. You don't look like me. Go there. You don't belong here. Here in this queue, here in this country. That's my reading. Right, to conclude, because I'm conscious of the time. A silly and banal, just to use because Milik was here, I used the term banal. As banal it might be, one of these conclusions. Nation matters. But nation matters in relation to others. Don't take, like some scholars do, bypassing the nation, going either supranational, in the sense of transnationalism that's been so much around in the scholarship, or down at the local urban city scale, the urban conviviality. Again, Balaban is a champion of this, you will hear tomorrow. You just need to look in a logic that is not either or, but it's and. There is the nation, there is the local, there is the supranational, and see how they interact. This is what, as scholars, we need to investigate. Okay? Second point, with Combola, we try to see what is the relevance of the race inside the nation. And from this study, my understanding is that if there is anything that can be, the nation can still be mobilized beyond, behind, and over racial differences, ethnic differences, is by using the culture, is what we do. Despite your faces, we do the same things together in the same way. There is an author just called Tim Evans who talk about everyday nation in terms of everyday synchronicities. So ways of doing together at the same time here. This is what the nation is about. Last point is the agency. We have a dear colleague, John Fox. I may be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Michael can tell me more. But when you talk about everyday nation, Michael authored his book, there's always a sense that, I don't know, it seems is a time in which Garfinkel.
He stole that from me. He stole that from me.
So, I think it's important to think about how people that don't look like us, I show the cover of the magazine, The Economist, you think that there is the nation. That's just one part of the nation. Let's not stop there. There is so much nation beyond the white nation. Let's investigate. And so let's take seriously the voices of the people that have different faces and see what kind of nation emerges from them. And see whether there is possibility to reconcile, or even in an agonistic way. We don't necessarily have to agree, but these are equally legitimate voices. And they don't need to be legitimate. Actually, they need to be in power and be heard. I stop here. Sorry, conscious of the time.
We've got plenty of time.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't finish up.
No, we finish it.
Sorry, I rushed so much. Sorry, I rushed so much.
Have you got an additional 10
No,
minutes?
it's okay. Sorry, oh dear.
Well, that basically means we've got loads of time for questions and/or tea, coffee, biscuits. Are there any biscuits?
Oh dear. Yeah, it's chocolate, I don't know. David? Maybe not.
Maybe not. Okay.
Just tea and coffee.
Tea and coffee. Okay, we've got time for that.
Sorry.
So shall I take? What do you want? 3 at a time?
Yes, maybe 2 because I'm slow, sorry.
Okay, 2 at a time. Tanya, you've got a hand up, and if I don't know you, the gentleman there, yeah, do you want to?
Thank you very much. I just wonder, why do you not say non-white migrants or the non-white second generation migrant? Because I study white migration, and I just feel if we are not specific, we slightly obscure struggles of also white migrants, their struggles of recognition. Because there are European countries that are not part of the EU, that people can be also orientalized in the way, for instance, you described the case with some of the Italians. In a similar way, you might have people who are white. They might also be second generation, some Italian, but they have foreign sounding names, and this still has certain implications. So I just wonder, what is your, how do you argue for not being more specific, or because what I have understood from your presentation that you focused mainly on non-white migrants and their struggles, focusing on skin color and so on, and just kind of a minor question, how do you define or what you mean by variation? In your first slide you said that romanticism is variation in terms of migration, their effects on people's perceptions of migration and so on, and you were explaining the chart of how many migrants there are in different European countries, so just if you could briefly.
Sorry, can I go the way? Oh my God, sorry, because I got confused. Sorry, because I'm a bit slow. So really, sorry, I apologize. So you're right that basically in the quotes here, it appears that I'm not sure necessarily about the blurring, but for sure about the face of the nation. Obviously, there is a clear indication that these are non-white. But the main associations that I showed before, actually, they are composed by everyone, and they're not necessarily. So I use the term children of migrants because it's not true that I'm just focusing on non-white. There are many people, they are considered white. They might have strange names, as you say, names that sound differently, whatever. But by the majority of society, would be considered as white. So that was the sample. So the sample is exactly not capturing only the non-white. It's very broad, although maybe in this presentation it appeared that it was only focusing on those. I'm not sure that I understand the variation that you were mentioning before.
Oh, you're just saying the chart of effects of scale of migrants and public attitudes towards migration. You were saying it's not, we shouldn't just look at absolute numbers, but variation.
Sorry. Variation in terms of, sorry, I should have maybe specified better, is the time in which the variation happens. So, in the case of Italy, by, obviously, you have the starting point. You have the starting point and the ending point. But in the case of Italy, actually, going from the 0.6 to, I remember, 7, 8, it happened almost in a couple of years. So it's the short time that makes people react. They are not the absolute numbers. This is the key message, the key findings, particularly of political scientists. Negative public attitudes, you find them not necessarily in places which have the highest number of migrants. The negative public attitudes you find mostly when people fear the change or experience the change, not when the change has already happened. So in that sense, it's important in the case of Italy because it's one of the countries that experience in the short time span, the highest variation. Sorry.
Okay, you want one at a time then?
Maybe it's
Okay, that's right. The gentleman there with the beard, yeah.
Yeah, my question was actually partly answered already, since it was actually very similar to the first part of the question. I was also basically wondering about how, because your analysis of this disjuncture between physical appearance and language paper capacities was very fascinating, how like that challenges our expectations. And I was also thinking about proper names, first names, family names, and how there can be a similar kind of disjuncture and sense of surprise if you encounter someone who looks and sounds exactly like you, but their name sounds completely foreign. So in Finland, for example, last year they did this study where they sent out the same CV to a bunch of job applications, and depending on which name they put on the same CV, the results were very different. So I was wondering, basically, in your research, whether you looked at kind of other axes of difference besides physical appearance and language. For example, whether it's proper names or whether it's living practice, or like whether there are other instances where the expectation is shattered, not necessarily because they look different, but because their name is different, or they're not Catholic, or some other axis, and then how these intersect in different ways.
Yeah, the simple answer is no.
Okay.
Also because, I mean, Vincent here, I think in France, is everywhere, the kind of, idea that if you have, has been tested so much that if you have different names, you don't get the same in this country as well. It's everywhere. But also because it did not emerge from the data, so it's not that I created the data. It was not just there. It was just not discussed. The names, the personal names were not just discussed as a marker of difference perceived by the society, and because it did not emerge in the conversation, in the blogs, etc., it was just not picked up by me and other people. But yeah, obviously you're right. This is the case, but it's just not.
The lady in front of the gentleman. Yes, yes. Thank you.
So, thank you for this work that you presented. My question is about language and like younger generations. And I know you spoke about the ways in which language is used to show that you belong. Like the students, the people interviewed, they mastered Italian with the register. So I'm wondering if you saw any opposition, like the creation of a kind of own language among what you refer to as the new Italians, that also served as a kind of resistance to, or inside or outside the campus, for example. I don't know if the data show any of that, the ways that the language was used not only as to show that they belong, but also I can create something that is of my own true language.
Yeah, I understand. I think maybe this happened maybe in other countries. I'm not sure whether Kombola is aware of. I'm not aware of. By the data that I look at, there was only some jargon that's been used, but it's the same jargon used by that generation, independently by being white or not being white. Some of the words that maybe,
Even if it's not about race, but it's across whether they're white migrants or migrants of
no, not in terms of the migrants. By the way, they are not migrants in any case. I still call them children magazines. But no, just one thing that comes to my mind. But again, I would classify as being generational across ethnicities, not necessarily a thing. So, no.
Yes, thank you. Very, very interesting talk. You really got me reflecting on my own migrant background. So I asked a question on a very personal note. I am Bolivian. I am married to a Norwegian, and I live in the Netherlands. So my children are born in the Netherlands. They actually barely speak Spanish. That's Norwegian, and to me they are as Dutch as windmills. But I sense in them, they're small children I'm talking about, I sense in them a sort of need to conform their background as well. Waving the Norwegian flag, it's a big issue when Norway plays against the Netherlands in football, and also having this Bolivian stuff that they show to their friends. So I was wondering if in your data, in the interviews you conducted, you also found this kind of need to reassert the background, so finding ways to redefine Italian citizenship, even redefine the nation, but also in a way that allows this background to also be present.
The answer is no. And we're actually picking up on this on the research that we're doing right now. We're doing a research on, originally it was supposed to be Black Italians or Afro-Italians living in the UK, and now it's just non-white Italians living in the UK. And what emerged from that research is the fact that in Italy, they are not able to express that other dimension that they have. And we'll present the paper tomorrow, because the idea that Italy remains a space saturated with whiteness, and so anything which does not resonate with that level is very difficult to learn. And contrary here, they feel empowered. In the UK, they feel empowered to embrace the other dimensions, even in the plural. But it's not in the case of Italy. And it might just be a matter of time, and you might think about your own countries. It can be Finland, it can be France, whether this is true or not, the Netherlands. But it's just not yet there. These people, children of migrants, they are very much vocal. They are trying to change the things. How much is society receiving that push of change? I'm not quite positive about it. It is there. The action of changing. The ladies say, look, we need to open up. We are a plural nation. Let's embrace all our diversity, all the past of migratory flows that happen in this peninsula. We are just the last bit. Look back at the past. Let's become this plural relational nations. Is a voice? How is the society responding to that? Deaf ears. It's not just responding. It's a pity. I have the same situation. My personal family is, we are in the same condition. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for the very insightful speech. I hope I didn't miss something when I was away for a few minutes, but I would like to...
This is when I talk, that's exactly what I said.
Yeah, but this is, I would like to concentrate on, I don't know if I can use the term older minorities in Italy. For example, cases such as Slovenians, the ethnic Slovenians or the ethnic Croats in Trieste, or in the case of the more rural Albanian speakers, Artareshis in Calabria in southern Italy, and also Greek speakers in southern Italy. And I would like to ask you, where do these groups find themselves inside this new debate between old Italians and old Italians and new Italians, or between old and new Italy in general? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point. It doesn't appear in the research, but the research is not focusing on ethnic minorities, the historic minorities. Is only focusing on the ethno-racial minorities, ensuing for more recent migration. In Italy, I should say, there is big ignorance. If you ask an ordinary Italian, they don't know about the Irish community, they don't know about the Greek communities down in Puglia. They are obviously aware of the minorities, the German-speaking minority, possibly aware of there is also a Francophone-speaking minority. Most likely, if any ordinary Italian is aware of any minority, is the in Alto Adige, South Tyrol. That's the only minority that are aware. Going east, they even don't know where Trieste is. And I come from, my grandpa were from Trieste. They have no idea of the minorities there. So there's completely ignorance in the public sphere around these kind of issues. So I would say they're just silent. They're not just a matter of debate, of topic. And again, they did not enter in the research because I'm just focusing on the more recent migration.
Yeah. I thought it was very similar to him, even in the apologies, because you can make it even worse because I can make. So, what is there's a role in the research of these kind of old Italians, which are third, fourth generation of those Italians that emigrated to the Americas, because Italy has a very strange law on nationality. So even someone like me, who is fifth generation immigrant, got Italian citizenship, but you go to
you hear? I was exactly make that example. He has Italian citizenship, but well, in this case, you speak Italian.
Io parlo italiano, ma sempre dico che sono Molise. I speak normally that I come from a region where people say, I don't know where it came. Yeah. But my question was on that question, because you talk about this mix, strangeness, sameness, divide. What happens when the divide is the opposite? So you may look like Italian, you may have Italian citizenship, but you don't sound like Italian because you are raised elsewhere.
Good point. The answer is that I don't have any data. I mean, I can only do what the data I have in my head. It would be an interesting point to explore. I just don't have it. But yes, it would be very interesting. You can make a movie together, because I know that you are in the movie. Sorry, just a sec. Because if you go on the website, there is also some video of ladies that go around the city of Milan. One is white with blonde hair, and the other is black and black hair, and they ask the people, who is Italian? And you can see the answers of the people. I think it's also maybe subtitle, or I think it's subtitle. Or if you just send me the email, I can send you the link.
Sorry, one little question related to that, because in Spain I work in some project in which the government is also, because of the demographic crisis, trying to pull these Spaniards from the abroad, bring back. Is there Italian government doing something like that, targeting Latin American Italians?
No. So if there is a law, if there is a
policy making related to this return of.
Well, there is. I mean, the most recent the law, nationality law, which is presently in force, exactly extended the citizenship to people like you, but did not give the citizenship to people who were born and raised in Italy. It was passed by the far right. It was proposed by the far right, and
it's obviously urgent. Yes.
I was wondering if having about the difference of strategy of self-identification, for sure, and if you have effect on individual trajectories on their decision to self-define as a singular, like embracing or challenging the identity, or.
Sorry, I didn't capture the question. Please repeat the question.
Sorry, if you saw effect of individual trajectory in the strategy of self-identification, in the naming.
What do you mean by individual trajectory?
People history, like in their background, where they come from, socially.
So if there is a variation in terms of the demographics, according to the gender of the disease, in relation to what, sorry?
To the naming.
To the naming. I need to think about. No, because the naming was a collective effort. It was not necessarily individual. So it relates again to this association of second generation, and it does compiling all the data. On my mind, I don't remember there was any variation in the gender, also because most came from the forums, and it's quite difficult, so you don't know who's behind that nickname they use. You need to read the text. From the text, sometimes you can infer gender, the ethnic background, sometimes you don't. You just see what is the message and that. So data are basically capturing the overall message. Yeah, because they are anonymous, so you not anonymous, you know.
Question from the lady at the back.
Thanks so much. I really recognise the point you made about choosing the language, the surprise language element thing. And I recognise that in my own context in Wales, where people are surprised that someone can speak Welsh. And I wondered that, and then in my context, that's been used as a positive thing. So it's used in advertisement or in education as, look how great it is. These faces who don't think are going to be able to speak Welsh can speak Welsh. And I think I know the answer to this because it sounds pretty dire. But are there any positive examples of that in Italy, of where it's framed in a positive light rather than it always being a negative surprise?
Thank you. There are, we don't say there are not. But I wanted to understand what they tell us. I mean, I find it a bit situational in the sense like, yes, I'm happy to hear that you can speak my language, but then at the same time, that same person might still hold very xenophobic, racist views against you, against all the bunch of you. So I don't think they are still the same. It really happens, it might happen in individual cases, but by looking at the broader context, I don't quite see the relevance in terms of study trying to see how transformative, how the nation is changing. It might change at the interpersonal level, the one-to-one, but how much are we going to see a remaking of the nation? Maybe not. And again, looking at what is the political injection now, there's so little hope. Less and less. I really think it's logic. It's right wing everywhere in Europe. I say in Europe, but in Europe particularly, recent election in Finland, it is everywhere. Drift towards the right, mainly driven, that's my reading, mainly driven by anti-immigration.
Yeah, you.
Study, the data were collected around 2000, it wasn't written on the slide, 2014, 2016, I think.
So yeah, maybe they did not mention, but a couple of years ago, 2018, 2019, there were quite some singers, musicians with foreign background that were quite successful in Italy and still having quite also lyrics, I don't take taxis, I'm an immigrant and so on, but still they were quite successful.
I remember the name.
I don't remember the name.
I remember the name, it was very controversial because it was
Bello
speaking
Figo.
like
Bello Figo.
Bello Figo. Bello Figo. It was quite, sorry, it was very, very vulgar, the guy. He's the one you were mentioning. He's speaking with heavily accent of Italian, like Italian migrant, and say, yes, I don't pay the taxi, and also sexualized content, etc.
But still also, for example, in Palermo, and also there will be also with immigrant background, with the fathers from Italy or something like that.
There's not movement.
Yes, yes.
The ones that rainbow, which is some best
Yeah.
city.
This was then really like their otherness, visual otherness is being recognized and popular culture
there anything interesting that emerging that you?
Me, no, because for me just
I think
they're visible in popular culture and still they're very successful, something might be going wrong, you know. All people are accepting something.
Oh no, that's different. I mean, just listening to the song, enjoying the song, and accepting what. I mean, we always get at the same point. There is not. Oh, there is an issue of class. If you take away class, if you see Mahmoud in the street and you know there's not Mahmoud, it would be just like one job.
Yeah.
There's not something class.
Yeah,
It's
of
an
course,
issue in terms of acceptance. You know.
So it would be maybe some of these forms of mention, I don't know if they're giving us representativity or they're giving us a dead name or something like that, but your research was conducted before this phenomenon.
Yes, I don't think it would be a difference if I read the data and the findings and think about the findings and put them into different context. I don't think I would just see even item, all the phenomena that I captured back then, now they're just even more high, even more present in that sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your talk. I'm coming from the German context, and I think you can apply many things to the German context, which is very similar. And I was wondering, I know you are leading a presentation on the nexus, the race nation nexus tomorrow, but unfortunately I will be presenting at the time. I want to could you elaborate a bit on this and on the nexus ethnicity race? Do you see them as the same, or is there a difference?
So, I definition that race next is more, I'm not sure necessarily enormous, I think it's also empirical. So, in the literature, if you take guys like Paul Gilroy, Taliban, Stuart Hall, they make a structural link between nationalism and racism, nation and race. Whereas I don't think a structural link can be made. It can be a historical link, as most historian mentioned. There is a history of a link, but there is nothing that tells the nation is inextricably linked with a specific race. This happens to be. But the question is, how can that be tenable in a context in which every nation has become racially plural? The answer is not tenable. So what do you do? Either you discard the nation, either the nation becomes just the exclusive monopoly of a particular group, which by the way demographically is shrinking, or we rethink the nation and we rethink the nexus between race and nation. And so by listening to the voice of children of migrants, I'm trying to see that what kind of nation emerges that might challenge the nexus between race and nation. Sorry, I'm coming to, I'm a bit tired, but yeah.
Thanks for, sorry for that. I was trying to push you a little bit on this one. Do you think this idea that there's no structural nexus between race and nation also works if you take into account just the issue of the control of mobility and how that actually the control of mobility and borders? So do you mean like if you get rid of borders, there won't be a link between race and nation, or actually in a world of borders, there can be no between race and nation, which I think is the part of the problem.
No, possibly not. Possibly if you can isolate, I don't know, Iceland, I don't know, is still so homogeneous, used to be Finland. I mean, you can see that a race and a nation, possibly theoretically, and so the race nation might still apply. But by looking at the reality, by looking at the real world, if you see there's a demographic transformation, then as scholars, the question would be what happened to that nexus? If you keep it, then you keep a huge chunk of society out of the nation. How is that sustainable? What do we do? It's just that nation monopolizes you do with the legitimate demands of belonging of another group that lives there, sitting on the same benches, working with other people? What kind of nation do they embrace? What kind of nation do they found? Do they narrate, etc.? So just the demand stays there, and then I think it has to be studied. And by studying that, we try to expand on that race nation nexus, which also does not disappear, is associated with a specific group. The so-called, well, case of Europe is a white group, but you can outside nations like the titular group, like in the former Soviet states, there's a titular nation. So this is the group that historically has been associated with the nation, but that population changes when you do. You keep thinking that the nation is just that thing, or what you do with the others. It makes sense.
But what's the question of power?
Power in which sense? Of course, the power, as I say, that lady, what is the voice of the lady? The lady wants to change, wants to come up with a relational sense of nation, plural, etc. Some people from the left, they do the same, more on paper, I should say, than in practice. There's also another paper I can show you here. If you go on the website, you can see. The left wing, obviously, they celebrate a plural nation, which is a joy, like value, blah, 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 by staying on paper. When you see actually the policies that you also do at the local level, you see a huge level of discrimination, etc. So there is also an uneven power. But it's an interesting question going forward. Obviously, you might think that that group might still hold the power, and so might still hold the power of signifying the nation. But most likely what will happen is that, look at what's happening in this country. The Prime Minister of Indian descent, and no one saying a word about that. Not even the far right, I guess. Not even the British us. Or be just a very tiny little click. The Home Secretary, sort of Brisbane, is the same of Indian descent. She's the one that gets the migrants. There is a level of acceptance which is unimaginable in Italy. I'm not sure about France. Would you have such a thing? A prime minister, do you ever imagine a prime minister? Okay, the case of France is not African. Let's say a prime minister that would be white, would be accepted.
As a non-white?
Yeah, the non-white.
I think it's possible. You have to imagine that in 1926, the prime minister was a Jew. In the time of presidents.
Okay.
So, I mean, Mr. Justice was from Northern African.
Yeah. It's kind of I don't know.
Presidency maybe not. Presidency probably would be an issue.
Yeah, sorry. That's what because obviously the power is in the president. Yeah, that's what I meant. The president.
No, the president would be an issue.
Have you had enough?
It's okay, let's take it.
Gentleman there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just on that last little bit, we'll be a long time still waiting for the first Jewish president of the United States, but I like to think that I know him already. I've got three linked questions, and forgive me because I have to go out if I miss something that addressed any of this already. At the end of the talk, you were talking about negotiating national identity, this, the respect for the fluidity. So the three questions. One, what is the proportion of self-defining whites within the whole Italian population? And here, I think in the UK context, we make lots of efforts. Those of South Asian descent can rise to our office even if they're very stupid, like Sarah Brotherman. Sorry, that's right. But it still remains the case that 80% of the population is ethnic white. And that doesn't go without questions. So when it comes to negotiating identity in those kinds of ways, how much are we talking about identities that are negotiated at the margins and in relation to those of difference to that preponderant core body? How much are those world of difference between London, which is part of this cosmopolitan negotiated world, and the East of England, which is very much not.
Immediately, like in France and the countries, we don't collect data on census, or census data on ethnicity, so there's not figures about how people are self-identified and so on. Ultimately, is what is the category that is used in order to discriminate, etc. Regional, yeah, in regionalization, yes, it's probably present, as I showed some of the claim, it's very much present. We talk about regionalization, regional belonging in terms of the ethnic minority.
In terms of the process of negotiating identity for the newly reconstituted version of nation.
It's complex. I mean, it would take me a long time to explain it one. It is obviously a very important dimension regionally, but more in terms of fracturing Italy rather than bringing it together, in the sense that we have various autonomous movement in Northern League, but also the regional, in the Veneto region, pulling the national power and then bringing it together. So the regional variation are more pulling the national power and then reconstituting the nation.
Well, the question was more, is reconstitution more evident in certain regions?
No, I would say it goes by cities rather than regions. By the urban. So every urban, like you see where basically the PD, which is the left, center left party, is getting the votes, is getting the vote in the support. The same thing here. So basically the zones where they are educated, so the urban elite, intellectuals, so it's in center. So in that sense, yes, we find progressive, embracing, morality, nation, etc. Move out. Milano is a classic example. Milano has a mayor, left wing, the region, and whole Lombardy is very much on the right, far right as well. So it's just basically sort of rural urban that defines that dimension more than the regional.
Okay, it's 4 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap things up now. So can we thank Marco for